Hi, my name is Nick Zitzmann,
And I'm Parth Pratap.
and today we will be talking about using Wolfram applications on your mobile device. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Zitzmann, and this is my colleague Parth Pratap, and we will be talking today about the mobile apps that we have on iOS and Android operating systems for your phones and tablets. And we will also be learning about their use cases in an educational setting. Parth will talk more about that. So we're going to start with Wolfram Alpha app. It is available for iOS and Android. Now, the way I like to describe Wolfram Alpha is most search engines, you type in what you're looking for, and it'll go out to the web, and it'll find some other sites that may or may not have the answer. With Wolfram Alpha, you type in your query, and it will try to actually produce an answer for you without going anywhere else. Now, we have a mobile website for Wolfram Alpha, but we also have applications for iOS and Android that have a somewhat better user experience, plus some exclusive features that you can't get on the website. On iOS, it will run on pretty much every iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch made in the last 5 years. It requires a network connection. We sometimes get people asking us for an offline version, but if they knew how much information was in the Wolfram Alpha database, they might not really want that to happen. It would take a lot of space. This is the currently shipping version that we have is the last version that's going to support 32-bit. From the next release we do onward, it's going to require a 64-bit iPhone or iPad or iPod Touch, which is all currently shipping ones going back about 5 or so years. On Android, we require any Android phone running Android KitKat or later, and though it'll run on a tablet or a Chromebook, it is not optimized for tablet screens. And again, a network connection is required. So now I'm going to switch over to my iPad here, and I'll show you what you can do with the application. All right, I'm going to launch it here. And any query that will work in the website will also work in the application here. So I'm going to search for, that might work better if I orient, yeah. That's my autocomplete bar that just popped up here. I'm going to touch that to complete the query. And it's going to run here. Okay, there we go. And one of the most popular use cases for the Alpha apps actually is the step-by-step solutions. Now, we have two different kinds of step-by-step solutions. Going back a long ways, we've had basic step-by-step solutions, which is you touch a button and the application will give you all of the solutions at once. We just shipped a new version of the Alpha app last summer, version 2.0, and this one has a new feature, which I'm going to show you here, where we touch step-by-step solutions, and it will give us the step-by-step solutions step-by-step. Oh, except this time it didn't here. Oh, that's interesting. I'll try a different one here. Okay, it was not doing this yesterday, but I'll go back here. And some of the other things that you can do here once we've got results is that's really, okay, this query isn't working that well. Let me try a different query. Sorry about that, it was not doing that yesterday. Let's see, 1 0 1 1 1 0 1 base 2. That should probably be better off. Okay, we got step-by-steps there. And it's giving me everything too. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Certainly wasn't doing that yesterday. But moving on here, one of the other features that we have here is the image as input. If you see the little camera button there near the top right corner, I can touch the camera icon here. Now, this feature is actually paywalled. You can either be an Alpha Pro subscriber or you can buy the one-time in-app purchase in order to unlock the feature. You can take photos here using I can take one using the camera, or I can use an existing photo. I'm going to touch Photo Library to use an existing photo, and I'm going to use a photo of a very cute cat here. That's my cat, by the way. And there are some things we can do here, like I'm going to type monochrome and go. And what it's going to do here is it's going to take the image that I sent the server here, and it's going to do something interesting here. In particular, it's going to convert it to monochrome. There it is. And some of the things I can do with it here is if I long touch on the picture here, I can share the picture here, and I can say, for example, AirDrop, and I can send it to my laptop here, or I could email it, or save it to Dropbox, or do something where I can with it there. Okay, it just got sent to my laptop, and so I'm going to stop here and go back to my laptop. Okay, and then I go back to my desktop there, and there it is. So those are some of the things that you can do with the Alpha app. And moving on here, the next app I want to talk about is Wolfram Cloud. This is also iOS and Android. And this will allow you to create and edit your notebooks that are on the Wolfram Cloud website. It requires also any iPhone made in the last 6 years, as well as iPads and iPod Touch. You can use it with an external keyboard if you've got one. It's not necessary, it just enhances the experience somewhat. On Android, it also requires KitKat. On both iOS and Android, the Cloud app takes a lot of memory. So in general, the more physical memory that your device has, the more pleasant the experience you will have. You'll be able to open larger notebooks with it. And both network connection is required. You also need a Wolfram ID. Those are free. You do not need a subscription to use the Cloud app. And if your organization happens to have a private cloud, first of all, thank you. And secondly, in both the iOS and the Android apps, you can connect the Cloud app to your private cloud. On iOS, you do it through the Settings application. On Android, there is a widget inside the app that will allow you to change the server. And real quick here, I'll switch over to the Cloud app. Okay, thank you, Parth. Okay, and then pretty much anything that you can do on the desktop site, I'll rotate it here, will also work inside the app. So I can try something like type here, and then you'll notice there that the auto completion bar, it's a little bit different than it is on desktop. It appears right above the keyboard here. I can long press on one of these, and I can touch the button here that looks like a ... to bring up the function templates. I'll choose a function template. This is iOS only currently. I believe we're still working on this on Android. And then I'll try something not terribly interesting, but to show you that it works. It's to -5 pi to 5 pi evaluate. Okay, and one other thing we can do here inside the Cloud app is you see this little button here that looks like an image button. Again, we can take photos with the camera or a photo library. I don't know what's on this device. No, Parth?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. But yes, we can. You can take photos here and insert them into notebooks, and then you can also run different image operations on them, and that's how they work that way. And I'll move on now. There are a few things that you can't currently do in the Cloud app, like you can't create new folders, you can't move objects between them, or create or edit scheduled tasks. A few of these things you can do inside the next application that I'm going to talk about here. And one other thing, there are several privacy prompts inside the Alpha and the Cloud apps, and we use, like, for example, your location in the Alpha app in order to do location-aware queries like airplanes overhead. In the Cloud app, we also use them to initialize the value of here in the kernel. And you do not have to provide that information to us if you don't feel comfortable with doing that. I just wanted to say that. Now, moving on to the player application. The player application allows you to view your notebooks or CDF files both offline and online. System requirements are pretty much the same as the Cloud app, but since the player application, which is available for iOS only, I should say, it is quite a bit larger than the Cloud application because it comes with a full technology stack. Our entire kernel, the same one that we use on the desktop applications, as well as a modified front end for touch use called NB Lite. The player application works completely offline. Even if you have dynamic content, you can pinch zoom in it, rotate 3D graphics, and you can connect to multiple Wolfram Cloud accounts. So if you have like 2 accounts on our cloud, you can use that. Or if you have a private cloud, you can connect to multiple different user accounts on a private cloud as well. You can import your notebooks from third-party clouds and transfer files between Wolfram Cloud and the local device. And even if you have multiple accounts, you can transfer files between your multiple accounts in the background. And also, if you have an iPad Air 2 or later, you can use slide over and split view. The one downside to the Wolfram Player app is you cannot edit or evaluate anything in the app. And although it comes with a full kernel, the one thing that it lacks is JLink because we do not have Java on iOS. And so anything that depends on JLink will just fall over and fail. I don't know everything off the top of my head, but I know that a number of importers and exporters depend on JLink, and some things in the interpreter, and some other things, but most things work. And also other cloud deployments like Forms and such won't work in the player app. And I can give a quick demo here, and then I should turn over. All right, player app is running. I'm going to actually airdrop a file I found over to the iPad here. Stephen tried to show this during the keynote yesterday, and it didn't work out very well. I'm using airdrop here, and you can see here that it came over, and I can interact with it. This is what you see down there at the bottom there is what we show for dynamic content. And you can see here it works pretty well. And also you can go to your cloud and you can get your files that way. And I think that's everything that I wanted to cover in here. So Parth, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Nick. And thanks for not exposing my password because the screenshots has my new passwords on them. So now Nick has given an excellent introduction to what our mobile apps are. So the next thing I want to talk about is like how to actually use them for your learning process and in an education setting. To talk about that, I really want to talk about how I see the learning process. To me, learning is about 3 different steps, but they're continuously happening. It's discovery, creating, and playing with what you just created. And that's why our 3 apps are perfectly fitting one of the goals. So you can go through them, try different things, because learning is all about actually experiencing and getting your hands dirty, because unless you do it, you're going to be like, oh, it's out here, I don't know what it is. So you actually have to try it out. So to do that, I went to my old calculus book and dug out an example that actually gave me a problem in college. So I will go over that. I did use Wolfram Alpha to do this problem in homework back in the day. So it was understanding limits. So when I started learning calculus, I had a bit of trouble understanding limits. So I was like, okay, so how do I use the power of Wolfram language now to better understand limits? So here's the problem exactly as it appeared in the textbook, is understanding the limit of that function from left side, right, and at 0. So let's take a look. Just switch over. Perfect. So we'll explore this question, the question of limits from all of our different apps. So let's start with the Wolfram Alpha app. Oh, look, somebody already typed the example in. What a coincidence. So we will reevaluate the example. And if you recall, the question was understanding the limit at 0 and from negative infinity and positive infinity. So I'm just going to do the limit of that question and not give it any bounds for right now. It's a hard problem. It's taking a while. Perfect. So we see the limit as if you're approaching from -1, negative infinity, and infinity, but we don't really care about that. We want it at 0. So the limit, if you look at the plot, by looking at it, you're like, yeah, the limit won't really exist at 0 because it's different if you were to approach it from left or right. But if you were to just do this problem out of your textbook, you would have to calculate it, so it would take time. So what Wolfram Alpha does, it lets you visualize it really quickly, so you can be like, okay, so whatever solution I calculate by hand, I can see, okay, it makes sense. If it converges to 0, you're like, yeah, I screwed up the calculation somewhere. So the limit is different from left-hand side, which is -1, and from the right-hand side, it's 1. So there is no limit at 0. So that's what Wolfram Alpha really allows you to do, is drill down quickly to a problem. Now let's say if you wanted to investigate more limits, but you had a harder function, like, for example, a piecewise function, which I never understood till this day. And I'm a math major, just so you know. So we'll take a look at Wolfram Cloud, so which is the power of like using the Wolfram language and actually digging into a problem. So let's take a look at it. Oh, wow, somebody actually typed that one up too. What a day. So we'll start by defining the function and plotting it. So that's the piecewise function. As you can see, it has different pieces. Now the next thing you can do is just do a numerical table of trying to get the values before you do any calculation and see, okay, what do you think the limit is going to approach? So let's try it when x is equal to 1. So now we have the left-hand side table and the right-hand side table, and you can see they're both getting towards 3. So this way you can see the step as if you're increasing x and what the results would be. Now to do this out by hand would take a long time, and this lets you quickly calculate it all out. And continuing using the power of Wolfram language, you can calculate the limits at 1, 4, and 6. So those are the values, but at 6, it's a bit weird because there is no limit at 6. So you're like, okay, so what's going on there? So you can go further down, and then you can do directional limits at that point. And then you're like, it's different, so they don't really exist for that function at that point. So that's using Wolfram Cloud, so you can dig into the problem now. Now let's say you don't want to do any of this, and you just want to learn about the limits. You can use the Player app. And you can grab demonstrations from the demonstrations website, which has a lot of examples, I believe 12,000 plus examples of different demonstrations, so you can learn about different concepts. So I just chose one called Limit Laws. And this one teaches you about the different laws for limits. So if you were to tap on the graphic, it would pull up the different functions you can try and the different combinations. So let's say we switch our functions, and you wanted to learn about the sum law. So you can be like, oh, OK, so here are the two functions which are in the dash line. And if you combine them, what would be the final function, which is in green? Oh, and how does it behave when you're around 1? So in this one, you don't have to do anything. You can grab the app. This demonstration is online, study the different laws of limits, and be like, OK, I understood this much better. I'm a visual learner, so I understand things a lot better by just looking at them rather than like writing it out. So this is perfect. So those were the quick introduction to the 3 apps in education. Let me switch back to the computer. Nick is going to enter his password. Thank you. So as we went through, if you have a problem and you define it, you can use all of our apps to understand different pieces of it and then put them together. So for students, that's really helpful because somebody might learn one way, somebody might learn some other way, but if you were to put them all together, they might have a very good understanding of limits. I finally understand limits after preparing for this talk, so we're good there. And later, I've published this notebook so you can try it out. And then the limit laws demonstration is already online, so you can grab that too. So putting it all together, we have a complete suite of apps that you can use to really enhance your learning. And one of the big goals is we want to make it accessible to everyone. So you can get started for pretty much free. And we really believe if students have the tools to use them, they will use, and it will really enhance their learning. So that's why we're trying to make it accessible to everyone. A quick review. So with Wolfram Alpha, you can ask all kinds of questions. And here's an example of all the different question examples we have. You can use these for different categories and learn about those and really expand your curiosity and just try different things out. Because as a student, the more you learn, the better. In Wolfram Cloud, you can use Wolfram Language to really like dig down in a problem and actually create something new because we have so many functions and they're so well documented. You can use those. In Player app, you don't have to do anything. Just you can grab somebody else what they made and try it out. And it works great for that. And this brings me back to the learning process, how it's a 3-step process, but you can use different apps for every step of it and learn through that. And we have some additional resources, such as the Wolfram Demonstrations Project, which I already mentioned. So there's tons of demonstrations you can use to learn from there. And then we have courses on Wolfram U. You can use those and these 3 apps to go through those courses and our excellent documentation. Here are some of the other notable talks, which will be helpful. And some of them are in this room, so that will make it really easy. You don't even have to go anywhere, such as Jan's talk next. And we have a couple of meetups at the Homewood Suites, and we would really like you to come and bring any feedback, any questions, or if you have anything to say about us. We have one for notebook and one for mobile devices, so we really appreciate that. And if you want to just send us your feedback through email later on, here are a couple of emails. You can send it to us. So. And if you want to grab the apps, here are the QR codes.
Point your phones to the screen here. This is for the Wolfram Alpha app for iOS. OK, we can move on to the next one, Alpha for Android. Finally, there's Player for iOS. This is a little bit larger download than the others.
And that's all we have. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.